Let me be upfront about something before I get into today's topic. I am not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. I do not have any formal training in personality science or mental health. What I have is personal experience, a lot of time spent in my own head, and a genuine curiosity about why people, including myself, behave the way they do. This channel is my learning diary. I figure things out as I go. I use AI to help me research and understand things better, and I share what I find because I think some of it might resonate with someone out there who is also trying to make sense of themselves. So today, I want to talk about perfectionism. And not just the kind of perfectionism that makes you rewrite an email 7 times before sending it, though yes, that too. I want to talk about a specific kind of perfectionism that I think people who identify as INFJ will recognize immediately. The kind that does not just apply to tasks and work, but to relationships, to conversations, to the way you show up for other people, and to the impossibly high standard you hold yourself to when you feel like you have failed at any of those things. This is something I live with. And for a long time, I did not even have a name for it. Let me start with the basic idea. Most people, when they hear the word perfectionism, think of someone who cannot submit a report until every comma is in the right place. And yes, that is part of it. But for deeply empathetic and introspective people, perfectionism goes much further than that. It bleeds into every interaction, every conversation, every relationship. It shows up as this constant internal evaluation of whether you said the right thing, handled the situation correctly, responded at the right moment, or understood the other person well enough. And when the answer to any of those questions is no, or even maybe not, the self-criticism that follows can be genuinely exhausting. Here is what makes this particularly interesting for people like me. Part of what drives this is the fact that reading people comes naturally. When you are wired to pick up on subtle emotional cues, to sense what someone is feeling before they say it, and to think deeply about the dynamics in a relationship, you develop very specific expectations for how interactions should go. And when reality does not match those expectations, even slightly, it registers as a failure. Not a minor inconvenience. A failure. Something that needs to be analyzed, replayed, and eventually fixed. That replay is something I want to spend some time on because I think it is one of the most consuming and least talked about parts of this experience. Have you ever had a conversation, a perfectly normal conversation, and then spent the next 3 hours going over every single thing you said? Wondering if a certain comment came out wrong, or if your tone was off, or if the other person walked away with a slightly different impression of you than the one you intended. And then, somewhere in that replay, you start editing. You think about what you should have said instead. You rehearse a better version of the conversation in your head. You compose the follow-up message that would fix whatever you think went wrong, and then you rewrite that message 12 times before deciding not to send it at all, because it might make things worse. That is the loop. And once you are in it, it is very hard to get out. This behavior has a name: rumination. And it is extremely common among people who are highly introspective and emotionally invested in their relationships. Rumination is not the same as reflection. Reflection is when you think about something, learn from it, and move on. Rumination is when you think about something, think about it again, think about it from a different angle, come back to it the next morning, bring it up again a week later in your own head, and never quite reach the point where you feel like you have resolved it. It is a loop with no clean exit. The perfectionism feeds the rumination, and the rumination feeds the perfectionism. Because the more you replay something, the more flaws you find in how you handled it, and the more determined you become to do it perfectly next time. Which then raises the stakes for the next interaction. Which makes you more likely to hesitate, over-prepare, and then still feel like you did not quite get it right. And this brings me to something that I think people who do not experience this do not fully understand. The hesitation is not indifference. The silence is not coldness. The delay in responding is not disinterest. Sometimes, when someone who thinks this way goes quiet before reaching out, or takes a long time to respond to something emotionally significant, it is because they are waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting until they have found the right words. Waiting until they feel like they can show up properly instead of showing up badly. The problem, of course, is that relationships do not always have the luxury of waiting. People interpret silence as distance. They read hesitation as rejection. And so while you are inside your head carefully crafting the perfect response, the other person has already filled in the silence with their own interpretation, and it is usually not a kind one. The timing slips. The moment passes. And then you feel even worse because now you did not just say the wrong thing, you said nothing at all, and that felt worse. That is what some people call perfectionist paralysis. It is when the fear of doing something imperfectly becomes bigger than the motivation to do it at all. And it is not laziness. It is not a lack of caring. It is actually the opposite. It comes from caring so much about the outcome that any version that falls short of the ideal feels like it is not worth attempting. So instead of attempting it imperfectly, you wait. And wait. And sometimes wait so long that the opportunity disappears entirely. I have done this in friendships. I have done it in professional situations. I have done it with messages I drafted and never sent, conversations I planned in my head but never started, and apologies I prepared carefully and then held back because I could not find the right moment to deliver them. And every time it happens, there is this quiet guilt that sits with you, not because you did not care, but because caring was not enough to get you past the paralysis. Now, this is not only about how you handle yourself. There is another layer here that I think is important to talk about honestly. Perfectionism in people like this does not only apply inward. It also applies outward. There is often a very specific and high set of expectations for how the people in their lives should behave, especially the people they are close to. Not in a demanding or controlling way, at least not intentionally, but because they notice so much, because they are constantly reading and analyzing and interpreting behavior. They also notice when something does not line up, when someone says one thing and does another, when the energy of an interaction does not match what is being said out loud, when someone's actions over time reveal a pattern that contradicts who they claimed to be. And when people consistently fall short of those internal standards, the disappointment is real and it lingers. Sometimes it leads to distance, to a quiet withdrawal that the other person might not even fully understand. Not because the relationship has been officially ended, but because something shifted internally and the trust or the investment is no longer what it was. This can create real problems because the standards being applied are sometimes not communicated. The other person does not always know what they did wrong, or even that something went wrong at all because the processing happened internally and the conclusion was reached privately. And that is one of the more painful ironies of this pattern. You care so deeply about getting relationships right that the way you process disappointment sometimes ends relationships without the other person ever getting a fair chance to understand what happened. So, how do you actually work with this, rather than against yourself? The first thing, and I say this as someone still figuring it out, is to separate caring from performing. You can care deeply about something without needing to execute it flawlessly. A message sent imperfectly is still a message. A conversation that did not go the way you rehearsed, it can still be a genuine and meaningful one. The gap between what you intended and what actually happened is almost always smaller in reality than it is in your own head. Other people are not holding you to the same standard you are holding yourself to. They usually just want the real version of you, even if it is a little clumsy. The second thing is to notice when the wait is productive and when it is avoidance in disguise. There is a real difference between taking a breath before responding to something emotionally charged and using the need for the perfect moment as a reason to never respond at all. One is healthy. The other is the loop keeping you stuck. And the honest truth is, you usually know which one it is. The healthy pause feels like rest. The paralysis feels like tension that never releases. The third thing is to forgive yourself faster. Not in a superficial, just let it go kind of way, but in a genuine recognition that the fact that you care this much, that you think this carefully, that you hold yourself to these standards, is not actually a flaw. It is something that, in the right context and with the right amount of self-awareness, is actually one of your greatest strengths. It becomes a problem only when it stops you from participating in life. When the pursuit of doing something right becomes a reason for not doing it at all, it has crossed a line that needs to be gently pushed back. And the fourth thing, which I think is the most practically useful, is to start small. Not every interaction needs to be handled perfectly. Not every message needs to be the ideal message. Not every conversation needs to be the most emotionally intelligent version of itself. Sometimes good enough, delivered on time, with genuine intent, is better than perfect, delivered too late to matter. I am still practicing all of this. Some days I get it right, and I send the message before I have reread it 7 times. Some days I still find myself editing a sentence for 20 minutes and then deleting the whole thing. But I am at least more aware of the pattern now than I was before. And awareness, even when it does not immediately fix everything, is always the first real step. If any of this sounds familiar to you, I hope it helped you feel a little less alone in it. And if you have your own strategies for dealing with perfectionism and the paralysis it can create, I would genuinely like to hear about them. Thanks for watching. If this video resonated with you, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I am currently working toward my goal of 1,000 subscribers so I can finally monetize this channel and turn this passion into a sustainable part of my future. This is my unfiltered diary of solo living in the Philippines, and your support helps me keep this channel growing. If you would like to help out even more, you can check out the Buy a Treat for My Pets link in the description. My dogs definitely appreciate the love. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next update. Thank you for being such an important part of this journey. I will see you in the next one.